Hello there. Hope you're doing very good today. Daniel here, of course, and we have two emails that we're gonna talk about today. And seems like it's Thursday today, and Thursday has been kind of the podcast email reply day. Wasn't planning that, but it's become that, and it'll we'll see where this goes. Maybe it'll always be, maybe not. We shall see. But that said, let's start here. So when was this? Tuesday. So 2 days ago, I got an email from Estrella, or maybe it's Estrella, Estrella, who actually I've had a conversation with, but I haven't really. It's not really been any specific reply. I've just kind of like gotten her history. So we will read these emails, and then we'll talk about how she can move forward best. So let's start with this. So here we go. Hello, I just found your channel on YouTube. I've been suffering from chronic insomnia for almost 2 years now. I went to several sleep doctors, therapists, psychiatrists, and none have been able to help me. I discovered there was this thing called CBTI, and I tried implementing it on my own, but I'm just failing at it. I feel like at this point, a lot of what my brain does at night, getting anxious, waking up after 3 or 4 hours of sleep, has become a habit, and I don't know how to break the pattern. I know I shouldn't be anxious, but some cues happen. The anxiety starts to build up, and I don't know how to reverse it. So, how should I manage anxious feelings? Even if I try my best to ignore it, it takes hours for the anxiety to subside, and I essentially waste another night. I replied to her, and I just told her to listen to Talking Insomnia number 12, which I think is a really good episode, and then asked her a little bit more details about her trouble sleeping. So she replied, same day, Tuesday. Thanks for the quick response. I've had a bit of an issue with falling asleep all my life. I'm very much a night owl, and I'm generally anxious about nighttime. I typically go to sleep between 2 to 3 a.m. and wake up between 9 or 11 a.m. depending on work. So I was getting enough sleep even though I fell asleep pretty late. Then, about a year and a half ago, October 2017, I started waking up in the middle of the night and unable to fall back asleep. I suppose part of the problem is that I was trying to change my sleep schedule so I'd go to bed earlier, from about 11 p.m. and then get up 7 a.m. But I digress. Since then, I've been struggling maintaining sleep. If I'm not taking some medication, I usually get about 4 hours of sleep every night. As far as CBTI, my sleep doctor had given me a sleep schedule to adhere to. It was basically sleep restriction therapy. It didn't work on me. I just kept sleeping 4 hours every day. I sort of reached my limit after about a month of sleeping 4 hours a day. I've also tried following some of the CBTI rules, like only getting in bed if I'm sleepy and getting out of bed if I'm awake for more than 15 minutes. To be honest, those rules sort of pile on the anxiety for me because I'm breaking them all the time. Sometimes I'm just way too exhausted to get out of bed, even though I'm awake. I think that about sums it up. Sorry for the long email. By the way, sorry, this is definitely not an email. It was very concise, which I said in a response back to her. And I just said, oh, and currently, what time do you go to bed and get out of bed? And then she replied, I think this was her last reply to me. Hello again, I forgot to mention something in my last email, and it's a point people often get confused on when I tell them about my experience of sleep restriction. My sleep schedule allowed for 7 hours of sleep, but I just kept on waking up after 4 hours. Currently, I go to bed between 1 and 2 a.m., and I don't have a set wake-up time. Ideally, I'd wake up at 8 a.m., but I keep on either waking up around 5 a.m. or if I take a pill, waking up around 10 a.m. The sleeping pills don't stop me from waking up in the middle of the night. They just make it easier to fall back asleep, and sometimes it takes an hour to fall back asleep. Yes, you can make a voice reply, which I had asked her about. So first of all, Estrella, sorry to hear that this is happening, of course, but I'm happy we connected, and there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about here. Firstly, let's go back to the very beginning. Uh, um, you said you had trouble sleeping for about 2 years, and oh yeah, the first email from you, Estrella, was you know, uh, focus on the anxiety, and anxiety is for almost everyone a driving force when it comes to insomnia. Some people have like a tendency towards anxiety that spills over into sleep. So for some people, the insomnia in itself has become the main reason for anxiety. And if that is the case, I think honestly speaking, that is a better case than for somebody who has like a very, very strong general anxiety component in their lives. And it seems to me that you may, in your case, it's right, maybe that, sleep anxiety is the big issue, which could be, if that is the case, that's, I think, better than somebody who has like, very much general anxiety that just spills over into sleep. Um, my kind of advice there was to say, listen to that episode, and for those of you who have not tuned into Talking Song number 12, I think one of the really important things that Nick Wignall, who I spoke to in that episode, who's a psychologist, and we talked about anxiety, he said one thing he really recommended was to have a set time during, late afternoon or so, maybe 6, 7 p.m. or something like that, where you set aside like 15 minutes where you really kind of intensely worry, like you put down every single anxiety you can come across in your mind on paper and like really try to get it out, and don't expect it to necessarily help that day or the next day, but if you keep doing that daily, like as a practice, that can really help. So I think that was a big one. Now, another big thing, which let's go over to the next email from you, Estrella. Here it is. You said that you've been being kind of a night owl and generally slept from 2 to 9 or something like that, 2 to 11, maybe 3 to 9. Now, it's just good to know, and you can check out Insomnia Insight, the video or the podcast episode 107, where I talk about what's called the 3P model. And people that have like a certain sleep preference, like people who want to go to bed, who are like early birds or night owls, for some reason are predisposed to developing insomnia. Maybe it's because their pattern is like different from kind of like the rest of the world or whatnot. I don't know why, but that is a predisposing factor, which, how would that help you to know that? Well, if you know that people who tend to be night owls have a little bit of a high risk of insomnia, then I hope that also makes you feel that knowing that's the case, you can understand partly why you have insomnia, and also that the treatment for insomnia is likely to work for you because you have this kind of like, you fit, quote unquote, the typical model. Like, it is, everybody's unique, yes, but your insomnia is not. And thinking of your insomnia as very bizarre and unique, it often keeps people from getting past it. So, knowing that you're a night owl, people that are night owls tend to get insomnia. Your insomnia is not unique or bizarre or anything like that. It is a pretty typical thing. I hope that gives you confidence to say, okay, it's nothing wrong with me. A lot of people that are night owls tend to get insomnia, and so that is typical, and I also can reverse it, which is, it will respond to CBTI just like other people's insomnia has. And we'll get to why you may not have had success with your CBT in a little bit. So I just want to comment on that night owl tendency there. And then you said like maybe why you started having trouble was that you tried to go to bed earlier. And just saying that for a second, it is like if somebody typically goes to bed at midnight, let's say, and then they decide, oh, tomorrow I have a big event, I'm going to go to bed 7 p.m., then they're not going to fall asleep for sure, 100% certain, because everything is predicated upon when you wake up. So if you wake up at 6 and you typically go to bed at midnight, then at 8 p.m. you don't have enough sleep drive, you don't have enough need for sleep to fall asleep. So it could very well have been that you kind of decided to go to bed earlier, and since you didn't have enough sleep drive at 11 p.m., because you usually went to bed at 2 a.m., you just couldn't sleep, and then that somehow became a trigger. That said, however insomnia starts is actually not at all important, and we should not spend more time on that. Okay, now moving forward here, your sleep doctor had given you a sleep schedule, you've heard about CBT, and you tried implementing it. Now, I think this is really important. When I started this channel about 8 months ago, my take on CBT, to be honest with you, was pretty simplistic in a way. I felt it was all about like, get up at this time, go to bed this time, you have a sleep drive, like if you stay awake for a long time, you're going to feel sleepy, that's going to make you sleep, etc. It was all really about bedtime restriction, or what's also called sleep restriction. And that is important. Sleep restriction is an important part of CBT, but even more important than that is understanding insomnia. Like if somebody just tells you spend 6 hours in bed and doesn't tell you like why, you still don't understand why you have insomnia, you don't understand quite, what's perpetuating, etc., then you're not going to believe that just spending less time in bed is going to help you. And so what I'm trying to say here is that the cognitive part of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is maybe the most important part of it. So I think the reason that you haven't had success with CBT is that it hasn't really been properly done, meaning you haven't had kind of the full education on sleep physiology and like sleep efforts and sleep, there was another thing I was going to say, sleep efforts and general, the cognitive part may have not been there. And that's why I think you haven't been able to fully commit to it. You haven't completely understand it. So I think the C is super, super important. And if you browse more of the content on my channel, you will understand more. I think that's really helpful. If you're into books, I always recommend Sasha Stevens' The Effortless Sleep Method. It's a great one. There's another book called Say Goodnight to Insomnia by Greg Jacobs. That's also good. And I think really understanding is super, super important. And you said here in your email, like, to be honest, the rules sort of pile on the anxiety for me because I'm breaking them all the time. Like, you're probably breaking them all the time because you haven't fully understood, like, how they work, etc. And let's see, there was some more I want to talk about here. Let's see, hello again. I forgot to mention sometime, your sleep scheduled out for 7 hours of sleep, but you just keep waking up after 4 hours. Here it is. The goal with using CBT is to help you sleep better, of course, right? But the goal has to be that. The goal has to be like getting you to a point where you fall asleep pretty quickly, you sleep without waking up too much, and you feel good during the day. If that is the goal, you're on the right path. If you set as a goal that I want to get 6.5 hours of sleep every night, that is not good at all, because having a goal that is kind of a number, it leads to like self-monitoring and clock watching and checking how's this working and that working, and insomnia loves attention. The more you try to sleep, the harder it becomes. Like the more you monitor how much you sleep, the less sleep you get. The more you wonder why you're not sleeping, the less sleep you get, etc. So it's all really about like the first part of CBT is like understanding the basic principles of like what makes us sleep and how we build a sleep drive and etc. But the more important part is actually when you get past that to shift your attention completely away from sleep and just doing things that you enjoy, like living your life to the fullest despite you being tired, etc. That is really, really helpful. And just a comment on that again is like the problem with all the kind of quote-unquote quick fixes that people often at least try sometimes, like melatonin, turning the lights off, stop using your phone before you go to bed, etc., like that, is oftentimes that you're looking for something that is going to make you sleep. You have a sense that you can't sleep, that's the problem, and I'm going to find something that can make you sleep. And if you approach CBT that way, as in I'm looking for CBT to make me sleep, it becomes what's called a sleep effort. Like it doesn't work because you just keep on monitoring like, oh, it didn't make me sleep, it made me sleep, or this and that. You have to look at CBT as like a way to understand why you can't sleep and kind of like a guide for how to move forward, something like that rather than something that's going to make you sleep. So I hope this made sense, Estrella. And I want to say this, that I mentioned a couple of books. You have my channel, you have me. Like I'm super, super happy when I get emails. That said, if you're looking for like a more kind of structured path forward, my good friend and colleague Martin Reed has a program that's called, like, you can just Google like insomniacoach.com or check out Insomnia Insight number 108 where he talks about that. I think it's really good. But kind of like final summary of everything, I think it is important. It is super important to have a set wake up time, and I don't think for me, it's becoming less and less important for me to like really spend little time in bed, like doing that kind of extreme sleep restriction. I don't think that's so important. I think you can do a 7 hour window, a 7.5 hour window even, but you have to respect the get out of bed, get up time. Like try to get up the same time every morning, even if you had a bad night. That is really important. When it comes to medications, if somebody's taking medication as prescribed, like every night for insomnia, or not taking a medication at all, CBT will work. But if somebody takes a medication conditionally, meaning like you go to bed and you're like, I'm going to see what happens. Oh, I'm not sleeping yet. Oh, I think I got to take it. Or maybe I don't want to take it because then I'm going to blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. That creates so much sleep anxiety, you know? So that's another important thing. And I felt that was it. Yeah, I would say that was it for now, Estrella. Let me know what you think and how things go moving forward. Okay, now moving on to the other reply today. This is going to be a reply to Richard, who I think this is like the third reply, maybe, or maybe this is the fourth. But you can check out one of the episode pods. That is, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's simply called CBTI for Beginners. That's the first one where I talk about an email from Richard, and then there's another one that's called like Answer to Richard and Natasha, if you want some background. Now, let's get to the latest email from Richard. Hi, Daniel. I've been listening to a lot of your old podcasts, all very helpful. You really are onto something here. I really appreciate the support, Richard. If I had to summarize, I'd say that the essence of your hypothesis is that insomnia is not caused by any particular pathology. Rather, it is a function of overactive thinking that is anxiety. It makes a ton of sense, but how to change? So just commenting on that paragraph, yeah, it pretty much sums it up. It's and your question there, how to change? That is the $1,000,000 question. I'm spending so much time trying to figure that one out, and the question, like another way to put that question is, how do you move from, trying to sleep more, trying to figure out how you sleep, like thinking about your sleep, like like giving sleep attention. How do you move away from that when you still have so much trouble sleeping? I am, the best thing I've come up with, and I know it's not great, is, as much as you are tired and fatigued and struggle, like really try to do things that you enjoy, that are different, that are kind of not only, and this is important, not only like physically exhausting things like running and hiking and things like that. If you enjoy that, that's great, but you cannot go into a place where you think of like, I have to exhaust myself physically so I can sleep. That's not good at all. It becomes a sleep effort. It has to be you have to do things that are kind of mentally distracting, challenging, fun, or physically active is good too, but the main goal is, again, shifting attention away from sleep into something that you enjoy. All right, so let's keep reading here. I really like your post on Natasha. She sounds exactly like me. I wonder if our personality profile is especially susceptible to insomnia. I'm not meaning to speak for Natasha. We're both overly analytical. We are distrustful of others, thinking that we can do things best ourselves. Her approach and her tenacity really resonated with me and my experience. I just wonder how people like us ever relax enough to sleep. And I want to comment on this too. And you said like personality profile. I do think so. Like if somebody is super kind of analytical, like curious, or like more like problem solving, like trying to figure things out, that that does lead that there is an overrepresentation for with that personality among people with insomnia for sure. And I just wonder how people like us ever relax enough to sleep. Well, I can only say that you come across people like Sasha Stevens, who wrote her book, or who was it else, like this guy named Bruce, who I've talked about recently, or Andrew or Pexi Lopez, like people that have had long history of insomnia and have gotten past it. So how you get there, I think it's different for different people. For some people, like Bruce again, who had just featured on the channel, positive sleep thoughts was his big thing, and for Pexi Lopez or Asiano, it was kind of to a point where he like, I I don't care if I sleep or not. Like almost like, it was almost like a negative thing, like almost like a resignation thing. But basically, like for him, it was like, I don't care if I sleep or not. Meaning shifting away completely away from sleep and not even trying to sleep was like that was his big breakthrough. And for a lot of people, it becomes like when they went on a camping trip and they realized that, wow, I'm sleeping great because they were so distracted. Like how you get there, it's different from everyone, but there are ways to get past insomnia for everyone, no question about it. Okay, let's go on. I've really been struggling with my sleep. It feels like I do get better sleep if I limit the time in bed to around 6 hours. The catch 22 though is that I'm so exhausted constantly that I'm a mess from far too little sleep. If I go to bed a little earlier or stay in bed a little longer, I don't feel any more rested. I constantly fall to those micro naps during the day or evening, no matter how active I try to be. I have been increasing my activity, taking 2 walks per day instead of one, but when I sit down or try to relax, I find that I essentially pass out without even realizing that I close my eyes. It is only for a micro period, seconds. I tell myself that I'm not going to do it again, and unless I get up and move, minutes later, boom, another micro nap. I've tried to avoid the micro naps and limit myself to one 10 or 15-minute nap and then find it hard to sleep at night. Is all this just me overthinking and thus subconsciously telling myself that I have strayed from the 6 hours in bed that seems to work for sleep but not rest and am thus doomed to have a bad night? If all this kind of subconscious thinking is going on in my brain, it is at such a deep unconscious level, I don't know how to stop it. I do not know that this is what I'm doing, but if it is at such a deep level that I just don't know how to change it. It is like it is a different person thinking those thoughts fully out of my control. This is definitely very deep, Richard, very meta, and I think I could go into like kind of details here about microsleep and the 6 hours, etc. But I don't think that is really helpful. Because I think you understand enough. Like you understand enough about sleep to be able to like formulate, this great question. So the problem is not that you don't lack information, but I think yeah you are onto something. It is the kind of like what you say overthinking, overanalyzing, paying a lot of attention. I do think that is the root cause for you not getting past your insomnia. Now there was something else I really wanted to say, which was, oh yeah, this one. There's no question that if we don't get good quality sleep or we don't get enough sleep, we feel tired. But is it 100%? Is your fatigue 100% predicated upon how much you sleep? I think you should really kind of like explore that thought and question it, because a lot of people have a breakthrough when they realize that, only to some degree is my fatigue related to how much I sleep or how I sleep. Sometimes I have a terrible night and I feel okay. Sometimes I sleep more than another night and I feel terrible. And that's so important, because sometimes when people realize that, they are not so afraid of not getting enough sleep. And then paradoxically, when they're not afraid of that, they start sleeping much better. That's one thing. But I guess even more important than that is kind of what I talked about and alluded to before, which is when people find a big kind of distraction, something that keeps them from thinking about sleep, that is honestly the most important thing. So think about that as well. Okay. I want to make this work. I know that even saying sorry. I want to make this work. I know that even saying that plays into my frustration and becomes part of my inner talk that is part of my sleeplessness anxiety. I'm going to pause there and just say, so this is so meta and so insightful. I can't, no comments beyond that. You're 100% right. Yes, I go to bed super sleepy and fall fast asleep, hopeful of a full night of sleep, but deep in my brain, if I know I have succumbed to micronaps or naps or inactivity during the day, or maybe I stayed in bed an extra half hour that morning, or I am going to bed a little early now, somewhere in my brain I'm registering all this, and I know or fear that I will wake up in an hour or so and be screwed for the rest of the night. And sure enough, unless I'm truly exhausted and haven't done the things above, or if I had a particularly bad night the night before that usually resulted in a next night better sleep, short of those things, I will wake up and yes, be screwed for the rest of the night, and yes, I'll be angry and anxious and doomed to perpetuate this cycle. I think you're saying this, but I'm gonna like highlight it, which is if you took half an hour nap or you get up a little later that morning, that in itself is not gonna affect your sleep, but your concern about that affecting your sleep is the problem. Exactly. You're onto that. And then becomes the question of how do I not think that that 30-minute nap is going to affect my sleep? I don't know. I don't know exactly how, but as everything else we talked about is like, it's all about attention shifting. All right, let's read on. Ugh. It's a UGGH exclamation mark. I think we say that. Ugh. All right, so I buy into your hypothesis of anxiety getting in the way of our sleep, but light bulb moments are great. But how do I stop that anxiety? How do I not get angry with yet another bad night of sleep? How do I make myself into a different person that doesn't think or worry about obsess like I do? That is capable of being more relaxed and less obsessed with my health, my sleep, and my life. Seems like you said it. Seems like $1 million question. Exactly. I've not given up, and I really welcome your thoughts. I am just frustrated. Thank you very much. That this is another important part. I have not given up. At some point, I looked through my emails. I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago, and I realized that every single person who had like kept on emailing me had gone on to do better. I'm not saying that those people are like sleeping fantastic every single night, but are sleeping better, are like trending in the right direction. So I believe that the whole thing about like I don't give up, that's super important. Don't give up. Try to be as positive as possible. Try to do things that are new to you, that are like things you wanted to do but haven't done, or things that distract you from this. And I think that is the best I can share with you today. And by the way, you said it, that it is the $1 million question. I think about it all the time, and I'm hopeful that one day we will figure it out. I believe that the answer to that $1 million question is going to be some type of like psychological thing, like think about it this way or figure out this way, or maybe maybe the answer to the $1 million question is just like everything, like all the little micro insights that I talk about that we get from other people that we share. Maybe all those little micro insights together is the answer to the $1 million question. I don't know, but we are keeping exploring and keeping thinking, and hopefully one day we will find the answer to the $1 million question. All right, that said, I will conclude here, and as always, leave comments, send me emails. I love those, and I will be back. In fact, I think I'll make a video tonight that's going to be on either it's going to be on how we are not jealous of somebody that has a different shoe size than us, which is kind of an insight or like something that Martin Reed shared with me, which I thought would make for a good episode. Or it might be don't put sleep on a pedestal, which, I had a patient the other day who came to see me and said, things are terrible, like my blood pressure is up, my like blood pressure is up, my diabetes is not controlled, I'm gaining weight, all these things, and basically said, and basically really truly believed that everything was related to poor sleep. And when I said, I think that that's not, blood pressure is not affected by insomnia to that extent, and blood pressure, etc. And I said, I think you're putting your sleep on a pedestal, like you're placing sleep in such, you're placing so much value on sleep, and you're ascribing so much to it that it's going to become almost impossible to achieve. And she immediately said, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I think that was an insight that I might want to do a video on. And now I'm digressing. Estrella, you said you were digressing. Now I'm digressing. So let's conclude here, and I'll be back very, very soon. Until then, take it easy.